Good afternoon, everybody. Today, the board would like to start our meeting with a moment of silence for two individuals. First, there's a 7th grader at Phyllis Wheatley Elementary School who lost his life last week. And we, as a board, extend our deepest condolences to the student's family, to the student's teachers, and to the entire First Line Schools community during this difficult time. We also would like to have a moment of silence for Mr. Malcolm Earhart, who died unexpectedly this month. Mr. Earhart was a consummate professional and a great friend to the district. He and the Earhart Group were instrumental in building Nola Public Schools into what we are today. We leaned on him and his team during the time of unification to manage our public relations. Mr. Earhart will be greatly missed by the Nola Public Schools team, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and his team at the Earhart Group. At this time, please, let's pause for a moment of silence for these two individuals. Thank you. I am now calling to order the Orleans Parish School Board Committee of the Whole meeting for March 22nd, 2022. The time is now 1:03 p.m. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Parker.
Present.
Dr. Wagner-Romero.
Present.
Mr. Ashley.
Present.
Ms. Bodwin.
Present.
Mr. Marshall.
Present.
Mr. Zervigon.
Present.
Also present, Dr. Lewis and Ashley Hillpring. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Interpretation services are available during today's meeting, and so I yield to our interpreters.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amelia Smith, and I will be providing Spanish language interpretation today. Si a alguien le gustaría escuchar los procedimientos en español, me avisa nada más. Gracias. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members, superintendent, and everyone. My name is Vic Quinn Pham. I am a Vietnamese interpreter. I will provide interpretation in Vietnamese. Xin chào toàn thể quý vị, tôi tên là Việt, tôi là thông dịch viên. Tôi sẽ thông dịch cho quý vị trong buổi họp này. Nếu quý vị cần, xin cho tôi biết. Xin chân thành cảm ơn. Thank you.
If now, you could all please rise and join me in stating the pledge. We are now at item 1.3, adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda?
No, President Parker.
Thank you so much. Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Bodwin, seconded by Vice President Wagner-Romero. Is there any discussion on this item? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is adopted. We're going to start today's meeting with a vacancy announcement. Due to the resignation of former District 1 School Board member John Brown, the Orleans Parish School Board will receive letters of interest from qualified individuals seeking to fill the District 1 seat on an interim basis. All interested persons must submit a letter of interest and all required documents by Monday, March 28th at 12 noon Central Time. Letters of interest should be addressed to the board president and emailed to OPSB Board Counsel Ashley Heilprin at ashley.heilprin, Heilprin, @phelps.com. The special board business meeting on March 31st at 5:30 p.m. At that meeting, the OPSB will appoint a qualified person to fill the District 1 board seat on an interim basis until a special election is held to fill the unexpired term of Mr. John Brown. Okay, moving on to item 2.1, adoption of the minutes. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopt the minutes of the February 15th, 2022 Committee of the Whole and February 15th, 2022 public hearing. May I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So moved.
The second? Second. We have a motion from Mr. Zervigon, a second from Ms. Bodwin. Is there any discussion on this item? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are adopted. We are now moving on to item 3.1, our Accountability and Charters Committee meeting. This committee was previously chaired by Mr. Brown, so given that his seat is now vacant, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Vice President Wagner Romero, to facilitate his former committee, Accountability and Charters.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Accountability and Charters Committee meeting. We're going to start with, as we always do, item 3.1, which is going to be our schools update. We have Dr. Guidry Hilaire, who's going to take us through this month's updates.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board President Parker, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, Board Council, and members of the community. I present to you our March schools update. As always, there are so many great things happening across our schools. So to start out, our highlights, we must celebrate our bands. They really brought the energy and were truly the spirit of this carnival season. Despite the challenges experienced during the start of the school year, they put in the hard work and the hours of time practicing and preparing, and it really showed. So kudos to our band directors and our students for a phenomenal job during carnival season. Also, want to say congratulations to our 4A March Madness state champions, the Carver Rams. And I can't forget to acknowledge our state runner-ups, the McMain Mustangs, and our Warren Easton Lady Eagles. Congratulations to them. They really put in the hard work on and off the court, and it showed. Just a brief technical difficulty. Give us just a moment. I will put my teacher hat on and give you an assignment really quickly. Oh, there we go. Saved by the bell. Okay, and as we have been sharing on social media and visiting the schools to congratulate our State Student of the Year finalists, we also want to highlight their accomplishments today. So I want to also give a big congratulations to Jaden, Richard, and Anita, and also congratulations to Ms. Sharon Clark for being recognized as a state finalist for Principal of the Year. So congratulations to all of our recipients. For our enrollment update, as we mentioned previously, the main round application closed on January 21st. Results are expected to be released very soon by the end of this month, and round 2 will open in early April. Just to make sure that everyone is aware of the additional steps that take place from January 21st, the time period when the application closes, to the release of the results. The enrollment team members have to collect information for eligibility for programs and priorities, which for the first time this year includes Lusher, Lake Forest, and Ben Franklin High School. The applicant volume was similar to last year, with 106% of last year's kindergarten applications and 114% of last year's ninth grade applications. First, we would like to also thank the Louisiana Department of Education for being committed to innovation through the Reimagined Systems Initiative, and we are extremely excited to share the grant awards received across our system of schools. 10 grants were awarded to Nola PS schools. In the Innovation Cluster category, 1 grant award was provided to 12 single sites to expand the NSNO Teacher and School Leader Incentive Program. Additionally, a grant was awarded for the development of an English Learner Innovation Zone in partnership with University of Louisiana at Lafayette's English Transformation Center. A grant was awarded to increase access to post-secondary college and readiness high school programming and for the development of centralized services. In the school model innovation category, 1 grant was awarded for a Spanish dual language program. Under the category of wraparound model, there were 2 grants awarded, 1 to support trauma-informed mental health wraparound supports, and another to partner with the Youth Empowerment Project. And lastly, there were 2 awards granted under the category Local Innovation, 1 to support the expansion and improvement of English learner programming, and lastly, a grant was awarded to develop a robust family engagement program. We are excited about these opportunities and are definitely looking forward to learning more from these initiatives and programs across our system. Nola Public Schools received a Reimagined grant to fund enhancements to the district's college and career strategy. The award amount was for $300,000 for the planning phase and $1,050,000 for the implementation phase. The funds from this grant will be used to improve coordination across our external partners and to create an information hub that will connect students and families to internship opportunities in the region, understand how to earn college credit or earn an associate's degree while in high school, and various other college and career exploration opportunities for our families and our students. The team is in the process of developing a cross-sector working group that will include our schools and external partners to guide the direction of this project. In addition, Nola PS was also awarded $150,000 to fund the planning year of the Special Education Structures and Supports Reimagined grant application. The planning year will really allow the team the opportunity to work with our schools and identified external partners to research possible innovative system-wide support structures. Examples of such support structures could include a data analysis cycle for current and emerging student needs trends, also looking at a possible shared service delivery model and other training models across LEAs, and increasing access to specialized expertise in critical shortage areas that we know we're experiencing nationally, not just locally. So we're really looking forward to all of these opportunities. Are there any questions from board members? I will turn it over to Ms. Tiffany Delcourt for our COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Dr. Guidry. Good afternoon, board members. All good news on the COVID front today. First off, wanted to share that for several weeks in a row now, we continue to see significant declines in our cases and positive test rates of COVID in our school system. Actually, this week, our positive test rate was 0.2 2.24%. And so we're seeing that significant decline continue. We've also updated our COVID-19 guidance to update our guidance since we're continuing to see these significant reductions and making those changes. One is the removal of all the Omicron restrictions that we put in place after the new calendar year. This was limits to congregate settings, extracurricular activities, those types of things in our schools. We also reduced the self-isolation timeline for those individuals who are positive for COVID-19 from 10 days to 5 days. There are some additional restrictions. Those who come back to school after day 5 need to continue to put into practice to be able to come back soon. But the goal is to make sure that we have our staff and our kids in the school buildings with us as much as possible. To continue on that front of reducing quarantine timelines or time away from school, we've also allowed a test to stay option for our unvaccinated students because unvaccinated students are the only individuals required to quarantine. All vaccinated individuals can stay on campus if they're a close contact. But we're using the resources that we receive from the federal government, those rapid antigen tests that we've pushed 40,000 of those tests into schools. That helps us maintain this test to stay option. Individuals who are close contacts receive a lot of testing while they stay on campus. And lastly, we staged a timeline for the lifting of the mask recommendation that went into effect this Monday. Dr. Lewis was with young audiences on Monday morning as students were taking off their masks for the first time, which was a really exciting day. However, I do want to caveat all of this positivity with one major asterisk, that we still deal with variants. There are going to be future variants that are going to affect us. And so one thing that we're trying to be very focused on is as we reduce these restrictions, we are clear when those restrictions would go back into place. And so in our guidance, we say that if we are to ever reach high levels of COVID-19 community spread again, masks will go back in place. And so this is fluid, flexible, and we must maintain that same flexibility with our recommendations. Any questions about the removal of some of these restrictions? I have one more slide though, so if you want to.
Oh, wait.
Okay. Another major change is to our reporting process. So currently schools report COVID-19 cases to us in real time and also to the Department of Health. This was requested due to the limited timeline of the information we were receiving from the Department of Health. We receive updates from the Department of Health 1 week behind, not in real time, and it did not include all of the critical information we felt we needed for public health surveillance. Having that information in real time has helped us when we needed to make school closure decisions because of outbreaks that we were able to respond to because we knew the Department of Health was very overwhelmed. Quick decisions on additional mitigation needs in our district and watching to see how those mitigations impacted COVID cases in our school system. We're in a really different place now. COVID cases have dropped. We have very low levels of community spread. And so we want to remove as many burdens from our schools as we possibly can. So starting on April 1st, schools will only be required to provide updates to LDH on their COVID cases. And we'll be using the weekly superintendent's report from the Department of Health to build in the data for our weekly updates to the COVID-19 tracker. So we're going to keep the tracker, but it's going to be based on the data that comes from the Department of Health and not directly to the school system. So as of April 11th, that will be our first week of our COVID-19 tracker representing Department of Health data only. And that concludes my COVID report.
All right, thank you, Ms. Delcor. Quick question just on the test to stay policy. So just to make sure I have this correct, if I'm an unvaccinated student, I'm a close contact of somebody who is COVID positive, which is significantly less likely now. I can either quarantine for how many days or take a test every day and remain in school?
You can quarantine for 5 days at home, or you can stay on campus that entire time and test throughout those 5 days. Though we would be asking those individuals to maintain masks throughout that time period, several tests, and if they ever become symptomatic, they are sent home. So it just makes sure that we have more time with our students in our classroom, even for those who are unvaccinated.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Any other feedback, colleagues, questions? Thank you, Ms. Delcor.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Tiffany. For the final component of our schools update, I will turn it over to Mr. Marshall to introduce our CMO in school for the Schools I Work presentation.
Thank you very much. It is with great pleasure that I take this opportunity to introduce him. But before I do, I'd like to say that my roots go back to Lord Beaconfield Landry, some 5 or more decades ago, since that was the very first place on the athletic field of a Landry-Lincoln football game that a camera was first put in my hands. So my roots are very, very deep with Landry in the Algiers community. And it's with great pride that I see the growth of this institution at this point in time, this critical point in time of public education, as well as I'm just elated at what the Alumni Association is how it's beginning to form and support you all. I just love to hear from you all today and welcome you, Dr. Alicia Carter-Watts, Assistant Principal at Lord Beaconfield Landry, and our beloved Telly Lockett, our homegrown Chief Executive of the Algiers Charter Organization. Thank you all for coming today.
Good afternoon, board. We have, of course, Dr. Carter-Watts. Ms. Major says she's just going to sit this one out. She was supposed to come up here and assist, but she said she didn't want to. But good afternoon, everyone. Of course, my name is Telly Lockett, and I'm excited to share with you about our 9th grade academy. We were recently awarded funds from the LDOE to create this initiative and continue to move forward. Our 9th grade academy is a comprehensive freshman transition program for all first-time 9th graders. Incoming first-year students are scheduled into teams with a group of core instructors who can plan together, share common expectations, and help students acquire the skills necessary to navigate through this transitional year successfully at that. Students will still experience mainstream high school through elective courses and extracurricular activities, but in the 9th grade academy, we have partnered with the Louisiana Office of Student Financial Assistance, also known as LOSFA, and Advancement via Individual Determination, also known as AVID, to ensure that our students are proficient across the board. The AVID program fosters the development of soft skills, study skills, self-awareness, and student agency. Through project-based learning, students develop communication skills, learn how to collaborate with others, and develop and/or increase critical thinking skills that can be transferred into different subjects, areas, or classes. The following positions will support our 9th grade academy: 9th grade administrator, a 9th grade counselor, a 9th grade social worker, a 9th grade ESS personnel, and a 9th grade culture personnel. Staff will support students through push-in/coach teaching and pull-outs as needed. Students will be able to begin, in some cases, continue their development of social, emotional skills and awareness through dedicated, specific contact of their own counselor and/or social worker. I'll pass the mic to Dr. Carter-Watts to continue.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for having us share all of the wonderful things that we have planned here at Landry High School. For our academic support, we will use the AVID program as well as PBL and the Lexia Power Up programs that will allow for scaffolded academic support for students through in-class real-time interventions, development of critical thinking skills, and teachers being able to scaffold content to reach students at whatever level they enter on in an attempt to advance them and develop skills that they will be able to transfer to different content areas. For our professional learning, we invest a lot in our teachers because we know if we help our teachers grow, they will in turn help our students grow. So teacher efficacy and agency are increased and mastered through the development of their pedagogy in the professional learning environment that is facilitated through androgyny and heutagogy. This is accomplished through the professional development that is provided through the NIET TAP process, AVID professional learning opportunities, and curriculum-specific professional development that is provided through the different content areas. For learning experiences for our students, AVID provides students with an opportunity to develop skills that are transferable to career and other content areas as well as college. Project-based learning will allow students to learn how to think critically through real-life problems while applying what they've learned in the different content areas. Do we have any questions? Thank you.
Board Member Bodwin?
Thank you all so much for being here today. I love to hear about the Ninth Grade Academy, and curious sort of what kind of data collection are you doing, or sort of how are you tracking the success or planning to track the success of the Ninth Grade Academy? Sort of what's the goal, and how will you make sure it's successful, or how will you measure the success?
So to start, we are going to look at the data that our students come in with. We anticipate 2 paths. We call one GAP, and that's the Growth Academic Program path, and the ACES path, Accelerated Curriculum Services path. For the GAP path, we have students that will require those double-dosed courses to make sure that they are successful for state testing as well as growth in each academic area. For the ACES courses, those are our kids that will come in at or on level, and we're going to give them opportunities for accelerated curriculums, which will eventually lead into our honors classes, AP classes, and dual enrollment. Along the way, what we're going to use is our benchmarks that are created by our teachers and through the AVID program that will help to track whether growth is actually happening. If students are on the GAP path and they're demonstrating growth, they have an opportunity to switch over to our ACES path. And our data is tracked through our NIET TAP clusters weekly.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation and all the great work y'all are doing over there.
Just like to make a comment that, I saw something similar to this and presented at one of the NSBA meetings from a person that was from Austin, Texas, where they had a similar 9th grade program where they worked on the soft skills, the study skills, and all of those things in the 9th grade that went on to reduce many of the increased attendance. They had fewer expulsions, the grades went up, everything. So I applaud you all in bringing this type of programming to our students. Thank you very much.
I'd like to add President Parker, Superintendent Lewis, Mr. Lockett. We were all in a District C uplifting youth sort of roundtable discussion yesterday. And I was really happy when President Parker sort of made a call to action, because we were talking about youth crime and things of that nature. And he said, this is a call to the media, who often covers the negative things that are happening to youth and by youth sometimes in the community. And he mentioned, go and look and see at the amazing things that are happening in schools across this city. One of the schools that President Parker mentioned was L.B. Landry High School. And for those who don't know, Talia Lockett and Tammy Major are a powerhouse in the city. They in the community of Algiers. And so we're very fortunate to have them here as 2 educational leaders, helping to ensure that our students have a really solid foundation for not only academics, but career and technical training, and that is huge. So I applaud you, and I encourage, as President Parker said, I encourage our media outlets to see the amazing things that are happening in these schools, and this is a prime example of that. We are very proud of you. And thank y'all for your continued hard work. We are very grateful for everything you're doing.
Thank you to Mr. Lockett again, Ms. Major, who is in the background today, and Dr. Carter Watts for a great presentation. That concludes our schools update.
Thank you, Dr. Guidry. All right, up next, we have our accountability update. We have Mr. Latori Smith, who's going to provide us with this month's updates. I yield to Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, Board. President Parker, Dr. Wagner Romero, Dr. Lewis, and members of the audience. Thank you for this time today as I present our accountability updates for this month. Start off as usual with our notices of noncompliance. We're still awaiting communication from the LDOE. Dr. Guidry and her team reached out to the LDOE, and there's a meeting planned on this week or next week? Incoming week, next week, to get an update from them on our SPLC monitoring piece of it. As Ms. Bowden pointed out at last board meeting, those have been open for a while, so we'll be able to have a better understanding, provide additional updates on those at next month's presentation. Just a couple of updates on our schools with open level 2 notices of noncompliance. Bricolage Academy, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Charter School, are continuing to work and progressing forward in resolving their open noncompliance items. As I reported last month, they have both secured third-party monitors that are working with them to correct these items. They submitted plans to our team along with goals and timeline to get the items corrected, and then our team is checking in with them and holding monthly meetings to check in with them to monitor that progress. And the next check-in is scheduled for the end of the month for each of those 2 schools. So progress is happening at each of those places, and we're pleased with what's moving forward, but we will continue to push and continue to monitor to get those items resolved and closed out. Next will be a couple of quick updates on our RFA process. And as I always have opened it, in regards to, as an ongoing reminder, our authorization priorities reflect a desire for a strong bench of operators, but there's not an anticipated intent to open any newly approved charters opening in the coming years. In this slide, I'm going to talk through the timeline of where we are, provides an overview of the full cycle, brings us to where we are as of today. Schools last Friday received their initial memo from the independent evaluator with initial questions and findings that they had, and then they had until this Friday to respond to those requests, answer those questions of the finding. The next thing will happen will be the factual clarification memo will be sent to them by March the 30th, with a response date of April the 4th is when they'll have to respond to that. And then the final independent evaluations and recommendations will be provided to the applicants no later than April the 7th, with those applicants having one final response that'll be due on April the 11th. And then we'll do all of this work, and then we'll have a recommendation that'll be provided to the superintendent that he will make to you guys at the April the 14th board meeting. So that's just a timeline of where we are and where we're going to be going in anticipation of the April board meeting. And then the last update that I have, just talk a little bit about our district optimization and specifically our charter renewal working group. We're thankful for the group of school leaders as well as 2 of our outside partners that were on the call along with some internal folks as we had our initial renewal standards working group last Tuesday. We did that via Zoom. Our goal from that working group is to develop proposals to guide our renewal standards for this upcoming school year cycle, as well as to think about future considerations as we think about the renewal standards and the renewal pathways going forward overall. We held office hours last week after that to have smaller conversations with leaders, and we will continue to do that as we prepare for the next working group meeting that's scheduled for early April. This concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have at this time.
President Parker?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Just quickly, because it's so important to make sure that students are receiving the services to which they're entitled. I would love if you could follow up after this meeting just to let the board know about the targets and goals that the schools are working towards.
Sure.
That you mentioned.
Yeah.
And just continue to keep us updated on that.
Yeah, we
Thank
can
you.
provide you an overview of what those plans are. We can do that.
Mr. Smith, one thing also.
Sure.
From the working group that you all are having, for the next meeting, can we get just some brief notes on, outcomes in those initial conversations?
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And just a thank you from me for the update on the LDOE stuff and for continuing to push for our schools and advocate there. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Smith. We are now on item 3.3. Action item 3.3, the 2022-2023 Central Office Calendar, 2022-2023 ECS Calendar, and 2022-2023 Child Nutrition Calendar. We're going to move right through it. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the 2022-2023 employment calendar for central office personnel, 2022-2023 ECS calendar, and 2022-2023 Child Nutrition Calendar. May I have a motion to move item 3.3 to the full board?
So moved.
Of motion by Mr.
Second.
Parker, second by Mr. Ashley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Action item 3.4, Resolution 04-22 regarding jazz music and dance in schools. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts Resolution 04-22, rescinding the Orleans Parish School Board's previous action of March 24th, 1922, to abolish jazz music and jazz dancing from New Orleans public schools. May I have a motion to move item 3.4?
I'll motion.
Second.
Any feedback?
Yes, there is public comment on this item.
Thank you.
We have one public comment card from Dr. Ducote. And if you could please state your full name and address for the record.
Kenneth J. Ducote, Executive Director, Greater New Orleans Collaborative Charter Schools, Suite 3040, 2401 West Bend Parkway. Since it will now be legal to toot your horn in the Orleans Parish schools, there are a couple things I'd like to toot the horns about. One is the current board and administration's procedures for adopting policies involves multiple readings, prior notice of intent, and the vetting of policies and development of procedures and so on with the input of the schools and with a very transparent and open process. So you no longer have cases where you could get, in this case, an absurd result that comes up where one board member, based upon personal preference that's very ethnocentric, can throw out during an item on finance of a prohibition against a key part of the culture. The second thing I wanted to toot the horn about is that the whole issue that Dr. Al Kennedy, when he discovered this in the files of the district, that he also discovered other evidence for, is the tremendous role that the New Orleans public schools played in the development of jazz in this community. It not only was the faculty and students who went on to combine all kinds of different musical traditions of New Orleans into this unique tradition, which has been developed and grown through the years, but also it provided employment for jazz musicians who were so dependent upon gigs. It allowed them to be hired as musicians and as music teachers. And the same thing can be said of the church gospel music, where you had vocal music teachers who were active in their churches, but also were able to have steady employment with the district. So there's two major things we think that this gives us an opportunity to toot your horn on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional feedback? Mr. Zervigon?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Dr. Ducote for bringing this to my attention to submit this. And it was Connie Phelps, librarian at the Special Collections of the Earl K. Long Library, who had found the original minutes for us where it was demonstrated what Dr. Ducote just described. And to reiterate that this Thursday, by chance, is literally the 100th anniversary to the day since this previous resolution was passed. So we have this fascinating opportunity to, on Thursday, on the 100th anniversary, rescind this and again allow the playing of jazz music in the public schools of New Orleans. So, all right.
Board Member Bodwin?
I just want to say, in this instance only, we're glad that the policy was ignored by our students, by our schools, because as you mentioned, our schools played a major role in the development of jazz. So thanks for bringing this to our attention, and thanks, Mr. Zervigon, for bringing it to the board.
President Parker?
I just want to toot a horn for you, Dr. Ducote, as well, for acting as for wearing many hats, including acting as the unofficial historian of the Orleans Parish School Board. And so thank you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you, Mr. Zervigon, for bringing it forward to the board. I have a somewhat personal connection to this resolution. I've said it in this room before, and so I apologize to those of you who are hearing me repeat myself, but my grandfather was a band director, and he was told that he was not allowed to play jazz music because that was music for black people. And so he started a dance band, and they played jazz music and called it dance music. So this is a wonderful, I'm very glad that we can rescind this policy. I want to acknowledge it was rooted in racism, and also want to acknowledge the tremendous contributions of our students, and especially of our band directors, whose legacy continues from 1922 on now through the carnival season. So thank you, Dr. Ducote. We have a lot of reasons to toot a horn for you, and this is just one of them.
Any other board comments? All right. May I have a motion to move item 3.4 to the full board?
So moved.
Motioned by Mr. Zervigon. Can I get a second?
Dr. Wagner-Rumor, I believe the motion has already been made
That's
and
right.
seconded. Just now,
Thank
time
you.
to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
It's a
And then
resolution, right?
we're moving it forward to the full board.
Okay, got it. Yep. Thank you.
All right, action item 3.5, cooperative agreement between the Orleans Parish School Board, City of New Orleans, and Agenda for Children Incorporated. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the cooperative endeavor agreement, CEA, with the City of New Orleans and Agenda for Children to support early childhood education. May I have a motion to move item 3.5 to the full board?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Zervigon, seconded by President Parker. And are there any public comments? Any board comments? Mr. Zervigon.
Thank you to everyone who worked on this and all parties. It's a perfect example of what we can achieve when we all work together with multiple government agencies and nonprofits for the benefit of the children, in this case for early childhood, which everyone on this board, I think I can speak for us, we all strongly support. And we especially appreciate that everyone's role in this is recognized and then codified in this agreement so we can move forward in transparency with the way it goes forward. So thank you for all the work on this, and this is an exciting day for early childhood, and we look forward to hoping this goes forward with the voters and what happens in the future.
Any other board comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that moves on to the full board on Thursday. Action item 3.6, resolution 06-22 regarding underage drinking prevention. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 06-22 in recognition of the Foundation for Advancing Alcohol Responsibilities, responsibility.org, work aimed at thwarting underage drinking and preventing alcohol-related deaths and injuries. May I have a motion to move item 3.6 to the full board?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, moved by Mr. Ashley, seconded by Board Member Bodwin. Any public comments? Any board feedback? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 3.6 moves on to the Thursday meeting. I now move this forward to Mr. Ashley to take us through budget and finance.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to have Stuart Gay, our finance director, give us a finance report. So I'll yield to him at this moment.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members and New Orleans Public Schools stakeholders. This is the finance report for the month of March 2022. We have our financial statement analysis, our sales tax trend, an update on deferred revenues, and our FY21 audit update. In the month of January 22, the budget actual income statement showed revenues of just over $2.1 million, were 49% over the budgeted revenues for the period of $1.4 million. The expenditures for the same period in January of $2.3 million were just under by 2% for the budgeted expenditures. And overall in January, the deficit of $189,272 was less than the budgeted deficit of $944,000. After the transfers in, the net change in fund balance for the period was a slight excess of just over $9,000. Overall, for the year to date, our revenues are $9,753,017, and they are just over $1 million over budget. And expenses for the year to date through January of $13 million are $2.8 million under budget. Some of that has to do with some reclassification of expenses we have towards grants. So we're starting to track a little bit under on expenses right now, which is a good indication for the year. Overall, the balance sheet for the period indicated $98,818,017 in total assets. That was a reduction of about $6 million from the previous month. We're in that window where we're waiting on ad valorem to kick in on our collections, so our cash starts to drop. And overall, $68,717,027 in liabilities, and $30 million in total fund balance. Again, with the portion there being dedicated to the policy revised or policy mandated sections. For the sales tax analysis, we are seeing some increases here, which is great. We're really tracking this over a 2-year period. We go back further overall, but in January, you see these spikes where they also add in collections from the prior year that they kind of dump onto the month of January. So that's why it wasn't that exceptionally high. It's an accumulation of several other months of collections. But overall, we are starting to trend upwards coming out of COVID. We're looking forward to seeing what the Mardi Gras numbers finally look like. This is the payment made in February, not the collections in February. So this is a look-back period of typically about 30 to 60 days in collections. In our long-term deferred revenues forecast, again, last year for the audit, we ended up slightly over at $57 per pupil. This year, we're projecting $170 of negative deferred revenue per student. Which you'll see also on the agenda today. We have an agreement that we're presenting to charters per policy for the deferment of that negative revenue until next year. But overall, as we're starting to come out of this decrease in sales tax cycle, you can see as we move into FY23 and beyond, we're getting back into the normal period of having positive deferred revenue, which is excellent news. For our 21 audit update at this point, to review for FY20, we had 8 audit findings, and of those 5 have been completely resolved. 3 carried forward into FY21. The first 3 that you see there in italics under FY21, the internal control over financial reporting of receivables and payables, that primarily had to do with the timing of the submission of our FY20 audit. There was just work that we couldn't go back in time and complete in order to get through that finding acceptably to the auditors. The violation of the Local Government Budget Act, that's if you have a negative variance of 5%. So if you have a negative variance of revenue, 5%. If you have an increase in expenses of 5%. And then the other piece there is if you have transfers out, which look like expenses. And we have $7 million of transfers out on our financials because of negative deferred revenue. Because we can't project that that's actually going to be collected, we have to expense that off the books. So this year we go down a lot. Next year we'll go back a lot as the increase, but we can't call it a receivable, so we have to expense it off the books. So that counts as, because we didn't know that until recently, that counts as part of the 5% in expenses. So we had a repeat there. The preparation of the CFO, which is the Schedule of Expenditure of Federal Awards, That was a tough one because I actually worked on the CFA schedule myself, but we had run that prior to realizing that we had expenses of the district that hadn't been claimed yet, and we had a choice of either not correcting the CFA or making the claim for a lot of money of expenses, so we made the claim for expenses and had a repeat finding on those. The others get into some accounting transactions. Overall, we had some POs that we had open. The fourth one, the accrued expenditures and accounting estimates. That speaks to we were holding purchase orders open too long and crossing fiscal years. And so we've got to close those out. We're going to change some of the work that we do on multi-year purchase orders. Information technology and use of accounting systems. It was judged in their opinion that we didn't have enough experience in Munis, which is our ERP system overall. We've done extensive training in the last 9 months with all of our incoming staff to improve our knowledge of the system and utilize some of the modules that would previously been underutilized. And then the last piece, the bank account reconciliations to pooled cash fund. We had come across a negative $4.6 million related to our revenue anticipation note where we didn't do a final pooled cash reconciliation on that transaction. It showed up as a giant negative in our financials. And because of the threshold of $4.6 million, that accounting error was noted as a material weakness in our financial statements. So those are the audit's findings for now. The auditors will be here next month to present overall on everything else and any questions that you all may have directly from the auditors. The submission date is the end of this month per our extension with the legislative auditor. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Question?
Ms. Zervigon?
From what you describe, well, thank you for the work that over the years y'all been doing to get this all straight. Some of what you described sounds like it must not be unique in the state in terms of with the rise and fall of sales taxes, with the impact of storms, grant revenue coming in and out. If you could illuminate on that a little bit.
For negative deferred revenue specifically?
Well, that is so specific to us.
Specific to us.
That's so specific to us, but
Right.
I'm just thinking a lot of people must be wrestling with these kind of problems with the economy and the impact of storms and trying to get all this straight and stay within the budget laws of the state.
Right. Yeah, having the write-off is tough because you really don't know it until you've already passed the fiscal year and the opportunity to make a budget revision. So last year in June, the board made 2 budget revisions, one to capital and one to special revenue funds. At the time, the focus was making sure we adopted millions of ESSER funds and thought that that was the extent of it because our expenses overall, and again, you'll see it in the audit financial statements, were within a couple $100,000 of the budget. It was very close. I think it was 1.5% of expense. So that part was good. The management of the budget was good. This huge transfer out, which is really kind of beyond our control, is what we're wrestling with now. We did have a discussion in our finance working group about potentially having to bring policies to the board of how do we guarantee collections so that the auditors will recognize it as a receivable rather than a write-off. So we're looking at that now and having discussions. We certainly did. We can't open up charter finance law and directly take back money. So we have to work with groups and see what that might look like.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing recommendations for solutions, and thank you for that's very illuminating.
Yep.
Any other questions, colleagues?
Just thank you for the, and I just realized what you were asking, Mr. Ashley, so apologies. I forgot you were chairing this committee. Just to thank you for all the work on the audits and your extreme transparency on what the findings are, what they mean, and the work that you're doing to correct them. It's very much appreciated.
It's all in the corrective action plan that is included in the audit. So each finding has, the cause, the effect, every other piece, and then how we respond. And then our duty is to make sure we enact those corrections. So.
Just in case we don't read the corrective action plan, we
Right.
really appreciate you bringing it to us.
Understood. Yep.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Gay. With that, we're on the action items. So we're at action item 4.2. Ratification of revision to the original cost of University Pipeline Services contract with Xavier University and amendment to prior action on contract renewal. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board ratifies a revision to the original dollar amount of the University Pipeline Service contract with Xavier University from $225,000 to $425,000 and amends the board's prior action to renew the contract approved on February 17th, 2022 to correct the renewal start date from March 1st, 2022 to January 1st of 2022. May I have a motion to move item 4.2 to the full board?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. President Parker. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Baldwin. Are there any comments on this issue?
Just one quick comment to piggyback off of what Vice President Wagner-Romero said earlier. This is something that could have been highlighted yesterday in Councilman King's meeting. There were comments made about making sure that we have local New Orleanians teaching in our classrooms, that we have teachers that look like our students. And I just wanted to highlight for everyone in the room, for members of the media, that this is the district literally putting our money where our mouth is and saying this is important to us. And this is a goal of our district to increase the number of local Black educators in New Orleans Public Schools classrooms. So I just wanted to highlight that and make sure that everyone knows this is a goal that we share and this is a goal that we're working towards.
Thank you so much, President Parker, for your comment. Are there any additional comments from my colleagues and any public comments at this time? Hearing none, seeing none, all the way around. At this point, we have a motion to second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that item moves on to the full board for consideration. Let's move on to 4.3, action item 4.3, approval of textbooks purchased via State of Louisiana contract and the Interlocal Purchasing Cooperative System, TIPS. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the purchase of textbooks for the total amount of $420,161 for the 2021-2022 school year for 56 Orleans Parish schools, Orleans Parish non-public schools through the following State of Louisiana approved contract vendors in the interlocal in the TIP system. Cooperative contract vendors: Amplify, Great Minds, Huffington, Loyal Press, McGraw-Hall, Sadler, Visvas, Learn Math, Vista Learning, Higher Learning. This is a great list. May I have a motion to move item 4.3 to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any public comments at this time or any board comments? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion's carried to the full board for consideration. Let's move to action item 4.4. Action item 4.4, request to approve the third amendment of CSRS LLC for capital planning services. It's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the third amendment to the contract with CSRS LLC for capital planning services, increasing the contract amount by $85,000 for a new total of $1,269,000. May I have a motion to move item 4.4 to the full board?
So moved.
I have a motion by President Parker, a second by Ms. Baldwin. Do we have any public comments on this issue? Any board comments? Hearing none, seeing none. May I have all of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries, and the action items moved on for the full board for consideration. Let's move to action item 4.5, approval of negative deferred revenues agreement and election form template. Mr. Gay talked about this during his presentation. It's recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the negative deferred revenue agreement and election form template to facilitate the provisions of the Orleans Parish School Board policy DCBC, deferred revenues. May I have a motion to move item 4.5 to the full board?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Zervigon. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by President Parker. Do I have any public comments or board comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries, and the action item will be moved to the full board for consideration. Finally, action item 4.6, amendment to action previously adopted regarding Service Pro commercial emergency work authorization for Miller Nelson Climate Control. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board amends its previous action ratifying the Service Pro commercial emergency work authorization for climate control services at the Nelson Charter School by revising the total contract amount to $593,564.32. May I have a motion to move item 4.6 to the full board? I have a motion by Ms. Baldwin. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Dr. Wagner Romero. No public comment. Any board comment? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. This action item is moved on to the full board for consideration. With that said, that concludes the Finance and Budget Committee, and I will be handing this off to our property chair, Chairwoman Baldwin, to take us through the property section.
Thank you, Mr. Ashley. Before we move on, President Parker has requested a point of personal privilege.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. Our legal eagles have caught something that was said earlier in the meeting. I just want to clarify that in the interest of expediency, the resolution referenced in item 3.5 regarding the CEA between the board, the City of New Orleans, and Agenda for Children will actually be voted on by the full board this afternoon at our special board meeting and not on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. And it probably passed without anybody's notice, but actually this month's policy committee was the fastest, as it didn't exist. So, positive changes afoot. Welcome to the property committee meeting. We are going to, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Delcourt to give us the capital and facilities update.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, board members. This is also the fastest we've gotten to the property committee in a very long time, so it's very exciting. So today, kind of the normal run of show, we'll talk about NOLA PS managed capital projects as well as RSDs. And then we'll talk about the facility siting process, and then those recommendations will be coming, or those announcements will be coming actually at the special board meeting preceding this, where you will hear from me again on that subject in more detail, and also providing an update on the school facilities preservation planning process. So first up is Rosenwald. I think one of the more interesting things here, not listed because I missed it, but that we have begun the school turnover transition process with collegiate academies. So we have started meeting with them and planning for their transition into this building. Really right now we're finishing up a lot of things. We're finishing up the roofing or the millwork that's inside of the building, the roofing, interior ceiling grid, all of those kind of last minute things that are being installed currently. For the McMain renovation, again, finishing up with doing some electrical upgrades, continuing with the installation of ductwork, again, adding to the air conditioning capacity of this building and all of the equipment necessary to do so. Again, the work at McMain and Douglas auditorium renovations are pretty much being done almost in tandem. So we're in a very similar place there as well. Ongoing plumbing work and electrical work happening there as well. And one thing I do want to note, we did expect some cost overruns at Douglas and McMain. We haven't seen those yet. That's not to say they're not yet to come, but we have been able to manage these renovations pretty closely and haven't seen the change orders yet that we expected. So we're still well within budget on both of these projects. Moving into the projects being managed by the Recovery School District, the first is the renovation of Dr. Alice Joffrey High School, again, the Career Center for New Orleans. We do have permanent power at this building now, so that's a big stage, and being able to climate control the completed parts of the facility. We are testing the chiller system for leaks and capacity issues. Plumbing work is ongoing. Some of the interior rough end and drywall work is ongoing, and excitingly, we've begun the ordering process of the specialized furniture, fixtures, and equipment, because this is such a unique program here that we're ordering a lot of unique things that we don't typically order. So working with NOCC on this and moving forward, it's very exciting to get those orders in for the career and technical parts of this facility. For the Rosemarie Loving School, again, this is during the Orleans School Facility Foundation. We are proceeding with the tax credit for this facility that will help fund it. But a lot of exciting things continuing at this location as well. The wood floor repairs are starting on the 3rd floor. Again, this is a historic renovation, so trying to keep as much of the initial work for this facility in place. New light fixtures, painting of the exterior, keeping that same peachy color that we're used to at the location. HVAC work is being installed again as we're trying to start climate controlling the interior of the space, and the steel erection of the new gym site, which is the new build that's going to be located on this campus. And last of our capital project updates is the Walter L. Cohen facility. Exterior framing of this facility is nearly complete, so we're kind of tightening up the outside. The windows are also currently being installed, also a part of that exterior work being completed. Installing the roof on the gym, and a lot of ongoing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing work of the entire facility, but on schedule for this facility as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit in this presentation about the process that we use for the evaluation of our facility siting applications that we received in February, again, going in more detail during the special board meeting shortly after this meeting. So district-owned facilities that have been identified for long-term use as part of our 2019 facility plan that housed schools that are closing either through voluntary closure or non-renewals have been made to existing school facilities through an application process. These are the 3 objectives of that application process, which are really focused on our needs for district optimization. So first, we want to make sure that we are, with these decisions, improving the quality of our school facility portfolio overall, maximizing the use of our highest quality facilities. So that means that we are utilizing them well with the enrollments that are placed inside. And if we're using our highest quality facilities to serve students, we're going to be improving their overall experience. That application was released on the 1st. Applications were due on the 25th of February, and district review occurred the week of March 18th. This is an overview of the facilities that were available through this facility siting process. We have the name and address of the facility, the neighborhood which it resides, the facility condition index percentage. The lower that number, the better the facility, and also program capacity, or the number of students we expect to be served in a facility of these designs. For schools to be eligible to apply to access one of these buildings, they needed to be an existing public school in Orleans Parish. So either a Nola PS authorized school or a Type 2 charter that is already operating inside of Orleans Parish. Also, the schools that are also eligible needed to either be currently sited to a facility that has a high facility condition index or has no district-wide siting, or the siting they have no longer matches the program as defined in their charter contract. So those are the things that make you eligible for the applications. This is a listing of the applications received for each building. For Drew, we received 2 applicants, for Live Oak 4, and 1 for the Go Day facility. When we talked about what are our objectives of the facility siting process, as part of this review, we determined what are those probing questions that actually help us determine if we're meeting or exceeding those objectives. So this is a document that we created for our review committee, just really diving deeper into what those objectives mean in practicality. So for example, here we have to ensure the district's highest quality facilities are being occupied and utilized to the fullest potential. We're reviewing, does the program proposal match the program capacity of that building? So are they a programmatic match enrollment-wise for the building that they're applying for? Also, enhancing the overall experience of students. We want to know if this facility change will create burdens for families. What negative impacts, if any, can be expected with relocation, and what additional resources may be available for students in these changes. So our review committee was comprised of Nola Public School staff from the following departments. We wanted to make sure we had a wide breadth of experience as we reviewed these applications, from the operations team, the finance team, enrollment, school support, and accountability. Each committee member reviewed all applications based on the stated objectives and ranked applicants based on their success in meeting those objectives in their application. And when we talk about this later on today, we'll actually look at one of those tools that our committee members use to rank. So you can see examples of that. However, before we talk about where those decisions are being made, which Dr. Lewis will announce, I did want to talk about some major takeaways we identified through this process. First, when you have schools that are all in low quality buildings, being the lowest quality building that is applying for a building doesn't really help the overall district. If what you're proposing is not a good match enrollment-wise for the facility you want to be in, because our school facility capital funding is, either fortunately or unfortunately, directly related to the number of students enrolled in those school buildings. We don't get capital funding for school buildings based on the need of that building. We get funding based on the number of students enrolled in that building. So if you are under-enrolling a facility, you are starving it for capital funding. So that became a priority when we were reviewing these applications. Also, because of district optimization, we know that we want to make sure that we are not increasing seats overall to the system. So thinking about what the enrollment targets for a school has been over time and what they're proposing. Does it add seats? Does it further make bigger issues of our district optimization? Or will these changes actually help improve overall enrollment of the district? And lastly, we received a lot of great applications, but we can only make 3 choices. And so we have a lot of school facilities with a high level of need. And so we have to determine a process to be able to make better matches and find better locations for school facilities that are the most neediest, or because of where they are located, we cannot put in all the things we know a high quality facility deserves. And so that work is not done with this process, and it continues. And I think we even have a higher understanding of that need. So these facility citing recommendations were made to Dr. Lewis last Thursday. We reviewed this information with him and made our recommendations to him. Dr. Lewis will announce his citing decisions during the superintendent's report as part of today's special board meeting, and you will hear from me again in more detail about those decisions. And I have one more slide on a different topic, which is the school facility preservation update. So our school facility preservation working group met on March 10th. We had 3 objectives for that meeting. The first was to review the initial draft of the revolving loan fund agreement, which is one of the last items that we need to complete before we fully launch the capital process related to the school facility preservation program. We also reviewed a 10-year analysis of financial need versus available revenue. Available revenue piece is very important because not all the funds collected through school facility preservation can actually be used on capital needs, because those dollars are sunk in the individual school facility accounts of a building. That building doesn't have a lot of need. They have a lot of money in their account, and it can't be used for anyone else. So we've been doing a lot of review to help us understand what is available revenue for the capital needs we've identified. And also, based on that information, reviewed some proposed capital planning priorities. Next steps, we received some minimal feedback on a revolving loan fund agreement. We're also sharing that with board councils and our school leaders at the end of March, but went really well. And we'll hopefully bring this to the board in April for full adoption. After that review of that financial analysis, we do need to broaden that analysis to better understand the impacts, again, of that issue about underutilized facilities. So as we evaluate needs versus available revenue, how are we also impacting that ratio because of underutilized school facilities that aren't enrolling buildings to their full potential and therefore not funding their buildings to their full potential. And capital planning priorities, we're finalizing the priorities based on the feedback from our school leaders that we'll be presenting them in our March school leaders meeting, and hope to finalize those in April as well. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from fellow board members? No, I see none. That was a really comprehensive update. Thank you so much. I know we're going to be hearing even more in a couple of hours, so I think it's clear that a lot of what you all are working on right now is very complex and has a lot of moving parts. So we appreciate the update and all your work.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our property committee. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zervigon for the legal legislative committee.
Thank you, Ms. Bodwin. For legislative and legal, we have a resolution that has been presented. Action item 6.1, resolution 05-22, opposing anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 05-22 to unequivocally demonstrate the Orleans Parish School Board's sustained commitment to full equality, inclusion, and acceptance of people of all sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions, while affirming the right to dignity and respect, as well as fair and equitable access to opportunities, including employment and education. May I have a motion to move item 6.1 to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Wagner-Romeros and a second by?
Mr. Ashley.
By Mr. Ashley, thank you. All right, is there any public comment on this item?
No, Mr. Oh, yes, there is. I apologize. Yes, I have one public comment card from Dr. Ducote.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ducote.
Ken Ducote, Executive Director, Greater New Orleans Collaborative of Charter Schools, Suite 3040, 2401 West Bend Parkway. Speaking on behalf of many of our students who are so affected by this proposal. I trying to figure out how the best way to kind of describe the situation. And the first thing that came to my mind was being in the wrong place to talk about an issue. The state legislature is not the place to address people's feelings about grievances about sports events and what's the fair way of determining winners of sports events and participation and so on. That's best handled in that sports regulations with people of goodwill, good intentions, sensitivity, and trying to come up with a reasonable and fair solution. I think I'm still angry about the Saints being stolen in the playoff game a few years ago with those two blatant pass interference calls being ignored by the referees, but there's no business for the state legislature to get into that and try to make some kind of ruling because of that. Second thing that I also think when I see this, I think about 1921 when the year that my mother was born, and happened to be the same time that the state legislature took to the vote as a constitutional amendment that was passed that made it unconstitutional in the Louisiana Constitution for my mother, who was coming from a Franco family, to speak what was her American but native French language spoken at a public school ground. And that law was in existence for many years. She herself said she was not punished for it, but many of her friends and children who attended other one-room schools in Louisiana were punished, and it resulted in infections of bladders and accidents and so on. And the emotional tear that it makes upon people to have sanctions and stigma placed on them because of the characteristics that they were born into of no choice of their own, or because of their personal characteristics that they have come to realize that they have, is totally wrong and should not occur. So we will testify on things that come up that we think are inappropriate for the legislature to handle, and also we will speak on behalf of our students who are inappropriately being addressed and stigmatized. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ducote. Any comments from the board? Yeah, Mr. Parker.
So I would just first, I think I'll have more, as I know a lot of board members will, to say about this on Thursday. But first, I just wanted to thank our board council for your work on this resolution. It's important work, and it's an extremely high quality resolution. I appreciate your efforts there. I'd like to thank the Forum for Equality also for reviewing the language of the resolution. I'd like to thank my own brother, who is a high school girls sports coach and both coaches trans athletes and has competed against trans athletes, for his continued advocacy in his community, and to me as well. And lastly, thank Vice President Wagner-Romero for his continued advocacy for students and staff who are members of the LGBTQ plus community. That's all I have. Dr. Romero, I believe you have some comments as well.
Thank you. You know, there is a lot of foolishness going on at the state legislature when it comes to LGBTQ issues. And as the lone gay married man on this board, very proud, you know, these issues are absolutely important to me. There are a lot of things going through my head right now. One of the things that I'm thinking about is how grateful I was for then President Ashley to allow me to do an opening for Pride Month in June, which had never happened before last year. That was huge. At the same time, I'm thinking about when I was running for office, how many times I wanted to give up because I had opponents and their supporters telling me that I was only running for office because I wanted to make sure that all kids use the same bathroom. And so that's the kind of ignorance, not because I was an educator, that's the kind of ignorance and bigotry that we're dealing with as a society. And so I think the biggest thing, one, I'm very proud, and thank you to all involved in crafting this resolution. I'm very proud to be a part of the Orleans Parish School Board at this moment in time. I really feel like the universe put me here at this time for a reason. And really proud to have board members that are equally as dedicated to championing for all issues that are inequitable and making sure that we're dismantling systems of oppression. And that we're fighting against the many systemic isms that exist. And so thank you to my board, thank you to Forum. Also, we have champions like Representative Amy Freeman, Representative Delisha Boyd, and several others at the state legislature that are crafting anti-discrimination bills for this legislative season. So I think folks like them. And at the end of the day, we just need allies. We need allies that are gonna be willing to speak up and that are gonna be willing to stand up against bigotry, because at the end of the day, here in New Orleans at Nola Public Schools, we're focused on, one, making sure that we're driving forth equity, and two, that we're ensuring that children have the best quality education possible. Period. And so I get long-winded, so I'm gonna stop there. Thank you very much, and I yield to Mr. Zervigon.
More board comment? Anyone else? Okay. Let's then take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The resolution carries. As your legal and legislative chair, as y'all have tasked me with that, I have received these marching orders, and we'll take them to Baton Rouge. And the last date of, we don't have an update on this exactly, but the last date to file bills is April 4th. There have been some filed in this regard, as you probably are watching it. So the administration and I, with your help, will be watching for bills that affect us, including on this issue and several others. They're thick into the session. By the time we meet again in April, a lot will have passed. So we will be very diligent in following the 10 approved priorities and making sure that the board is informed and that you're given the opportunity to weigh in individually, or if we want to move as a board when appropriate. So we'll be doing that. Watch for those communications in the coming month. With that, that would conclude the Legal Legislative Committee, and I can pass it back to President Parker.
Thank you so much, Chairman Zervigon. Before we move on to item 7.1, I just want to point out that our special board meeting is set to begin at 3 p.m. Given the issues with weather, the expected issues with weather, I'm going to ask the board members return to start for a 2:45 p.m. start time. So we will do our best to gavel in at that time. And given that there are no further items on the Committee of the Whole agenda, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Ashley, seconded by Vice President Wagner Romero. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The time is now 2:25 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.